The good news is there's only one word you need to know, and that's lie, or nigh, or by, or whatever comes out of your mouth. It's a nigun, a wordless melody. It's very catchy, so I'm going to start, and join me whenever you feel comfortable. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba. That's about it. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba bim bam bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ra ra, ya ra 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 ra, ya ra 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 ra, ya ra 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 ra, ya ba 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 ba, ya ra 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 ra, ya ra ra ra, ya ra ra, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ra 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 ra, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ra 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 ra, ya ra 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 ra, ya ra 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 ra. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba.
Shabbat Shalom. So I wasn't dreaming of a white Shabbos, but we have one. And amazingly, even all the way across the ocean, my friends and family in Jerusalem have been posting about the snow there. But the truth is, my mind this Shabbat is still in the desert. This past week, last Shabbat, we imagined all of ourselves at the foot of Mount Sinai. All of us are still there, our tradition imagines. From the tribal chiefs to the lowly woodchopper, the water bearer, all the Israelites who ever lived, those who came before us, whose memories we carry with us, those who are not yet even born, who will one day live, all gathered at the foot of that mountain to experience God's revelation and to be called to be a holy people, guided by mitzvot, a set of sacred responsibilities. I like to say that last week's Torah portion, Yitro, is where we receive the top 10, the big 10 commandments. But this week in Mishpatim, we're still standing at the mountain, and we get the fine print. It's actually another 53 whopping mitzvot that we hear in this week's Torah portion of the total 613. It's ritual laws, it's ethical laws, it's laws for the land and laws for our livestock, laws about how we treat our family, our business partners, our neighbors, how we treat the servants in our community, and our Torah focus for tonight, how we treat the stranger in our midst. So wherever you've been this past week, whatever you've done, whatever you've gained or lost, sink into your seat for a moment here or at home. Let your soul catch up with your body. Find yourself back at the foot of that mountain. How good it is to be together there. How good it is to be together here.
Wherever you are, sing along. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba. Hine ma tovu manayim As we kindle the Sabbath lights, Natalia and Owen, why don't you come up with your moms to join us on the bima? Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. You're at home to raise a glass of sweetness, and everyone in here symbolically raising a glass of sweetness. Let's all stand together for Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, be'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'alim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Shabbat. L'chaim. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Please take a seat. I'm just realizing, wow, we're in our Mishkan Tefillah Sederim for the first time in 2.5 years, so I got to remember to call out page numbers. And if you're at home, hopefully you're following along. There's a flip book. There were a couple different links that were sent out. So we bring in Shabbat now with Kabbalat Shabbat, beginning on page 131. You're under your seats. Page 131, Psalm 96. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru miyom liyom Yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru miyom liyom Yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru miyom liyom Yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, baruch hu shemo, basru miyom liyom Yeshuato. Page 135, bottom paragraph. Romemu Adonai. kodsho, romemu Adonai Elohim ve'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehad kodsho. Page 138, verses 1, 3, 5, and 9. Yalai, lalai, lai. Yai, lalai, lalai. Yalai, lalai, lai. Yai, lalai, lalai. Yalai, lalai, lai. Yalai, lalai, lalai. Yalai, lalai, lai. Yalai, lalai. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Enei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad hishmiyanu el hamichad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tikveret v'litila lecha dodi likrat kala. Enei Shabbat nekabela. Mikdash melech imelucha kumitzei mitoch ha'afecha rav nachshevet be'emek havacha vehu yachamol alai yitkena lecha dodi likrat kala. Enei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri kiva orech kumi ori uri shidaberi kevod Adonai halai nikla lecha dodi likrat kala. Enei Shabbat nekabela. Hands together facing the doors. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvtzola toch emunei am segula boi chala lecha dodi likrat kala. Enei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Enei Shabbat nekabela. Feel free to wish your neighbor a Shabbat Shalom.
In the final pages of our teacher and our LT member, Rabbi Lawrence Hoffman's book, The Journey Home, Rabbi Hoffman reminds us that despite the old adage that you can't go home again, our call to worship is a moment of shared spiritual homecoming. He writes, oddly enough, it turns out we can go home again, to a home we never knew we had. Not the ethnic home of European nostalgia, and not at the expense of freedom of inquiry and freedom of choice, but home to the deep down insights of Jewish tradition, its liturgy of blessings, its metaphors that help us connect life's dots, its thrill of textual discovery, its rootedness in a sacred land, its honest spiritual thinking, and at night, its insistence on the simple presence of human meeting. Hoffman concludes, it requires more than individual effort. It requires community. So we turn now to page 146, rising in body or spirit, here in the sanctuary or out in live stream land. We join together in our call to worship, our collective spiritual homecoming.
Joining together on page 154, we continue. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם.
On page 157, we join together in this reading. It's so good to be able to turn to a page and read from the book. Please join me. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Yabba bamba bim bam, yabba bamba bye, yabba bamba bye. Yabba bamba bim bam, yabba bamba bye, yabba bamba bye. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, yai nora tehilot, yada Yosef ele, yabba bamba bye, nora tehilot, Yosef ele, yai bye bye, nora tehilot, yabba bye bye, Yosef ele, yabba bye bye, nora tehilot, Yosef ele, yabba bye bim bam, yabba bye bye, yabba bye bye, yabba bye bim bam, yabba bye bye, yabba bye bye, yabba bye bim bam, yabba bye bye, yabba bye bye, yabba bye bim bam, yabba bye bye. Turning now to page 165, I invite you to join me before we rise for our tefillah in the middle of the page. Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will. Please rise. Adonai sfatai tifta, Adonai sfatai tifta, ufi agi tehilatecha, ufi agi Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah, page 168. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah Rav le'Hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid haGashem, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech olim, Umatir asurim, Umekayim emunato, Lishenei afar, Bichamocha bal givurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechaye, Umatzmeach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please take a seat as we take a few moments now to open our hearts to prayer, requiring nothing at all but the desire to let the words flow from your heart. Take a few moments.
open our ark doors and take out our Sefer Torah, I invite you to rise.
Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, ki mitzion teitzei Torah, u'devar Adonai Yerushalayim. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchutahu Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated. Quick story before we turn to our reading. So there are two guys sitting next to each other on an airplane. Who even remembers what it's like to ride an airplane anymore? But two guys get to chatting. Turns out one of them is a rabbi and one is an astronomer. Strike up a conversation, and the astronomer, not Jewish himself, asks the rabbi, "Tell me, Rabbi, what essentially is Judaism all about?" And the rabbi gets going. He's excited to explain about the 613 commandments, about the rituals and the life cycle ceremonies, about tzedakah and tikkun olam, about Shabbat every week and the holiday after holiday after holiday after holiday. The astronomer listens very politely, respectfully, and eventually nods and says, "Rabbi, all these rules and teachings and traditions, can it all just be boiled down to be nice?" The rabbi nods, turns back to the astronomer and says, "All these galaxies and black holes and comets and supernovas, Professor, can it all just be boiled down to twinkle, twinkle, little star?" I was waiting for the laugh, thank you. Well, the answer is yes and no, as this week's Torah portion demonstrates. Mishpatim, this parsha, as I shared earlier, has 53 of the 613 commandments in the Torah contained in it, almost a full tenth of all of the Torah's laws. Among them, don't spread false rumors, don't take bribes, every 7 years let the land lie fallow in a sabbatical. We have in this week's Torah portion the basis for not mixing milk and meat traditionally in kashrut. We read that when you encounter a stray ox or donkey, you should lead the animal back to its owner. Many, many other laws about damages and property, what's owed to victims, including the very famous statute, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And you could argue, as did the astronomer, that many of these laws simply boil down to be nice, be fair, or as Leviticus puts it in the Golden Rule just a little differently, love your neighbor as yourself. But what I want to suggest is that in many cases, especially in some of the commandments in this week's Torah portion, the Torah actually pushes up a step beyond whatever basic decency we might expect that good or fair looks like. For instance, we can understand why the Torah would encourage us to lend money to the poor who need a loan. But contrary to common practices today, the Torah goes a step further and instructs us to lend the money, but don't charge interest. Similarly, makes sense that if you found your neighbor, your friend's ox or donkey, today a dog or a cat maybe wandering the streets, you'd make an effort to return the animal to its owner, especially one you had a relationship with. But the Torah goes a step further and says, if you find your enemy's ox or donkey, even then you have to do everything you can to take it back. In these cases and so many others, Judaism pushes us just a little further than even our own natural moral instincts. So we're going to read a little section of these Mishpatim, excerpt of them. And in particular, after we hear it chanted and after we get to share in blessings, read just a couple interpretations of this important law about not oppressing the stranger. Because Judaism again tells us, It's not just about loving your neighbor who you know. It's about being kind even to the person who's most different from you. So if you'd like to join in the Aliyah blessings, I invite you in your Siddur. They're on page 368. We can all have a communal Aliyah together. And hopefully coming in, you got that handout, or if you're looking at home, you can download that one pager that has the actual Torah verses on it. You can follow along there. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamborach. Baruch Adonai Hamborach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamborach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Lo ta'ata mishpat evioncha beribo midvar shaker tirchak v'naki v'tzadik al tarok ki lo atzdik rasha v'shochad lo tikach ki ashochad ye'aver pikichem V'yisalef tivrei tzadikim v'ger lo tilachatz v'tam yadatem et nefesh hager ki gerim heitem be'eretz Mitzrayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. See, Owen and Natalia, even the rabbi gets nervous when she reads Torah sometimes. So while we have our Sefer Torah out, we draw strength from its words, we draw strength from one another, and we offer a prayer of healing. As we think of those in our lives, in our community, in our families, in our temple family who are in need of healing of body or mind or spirit. And in particular, we direct our prayers the Shabbat to Julie Ann Edmond, Terry Weinstock, Dara Kolodner, Paul Millman, Tiffany Thrower, Elliot Porwich, Drini Grumet, Ria and Marvin Weiss, Fred Green, Nancy Hanley, Neil Borden, Esther Schraga, Marlo Wiggins, Carol Sladkis, Dick Stone, Alan Bogner, Harriet Lipton, Hannah Stampelman, Enid Elton, Bonnie Davis, Lori Weinberg, Stanley Turetsky, Bob Glassman, Marty Feldner, Andy Rosenthal, Sandy Warshaw, Abraham Yochanan Dovlesser, Louis Siegel, Nate Moskowitz, Ari Fox, Keith Schoen, June Foreman, Paul Wiggins, Jody Kahn, Joseph Spinelli, Susie Wolfson, Antonia Nalita Chapola, Harriet Katz, Pat Ryan, Samuel Phillip, Jerry Golner, Ian Spear, Norton Blumberg, Terry Rossman, Julie Ross, Deb Margolin, Paul Stampelman, Scott Siegel, Greg Kellner, Daniel Foley, George Simonoff. And if you are thinking of someone in need of healing, I invite you to share their name out loud or whisper it at home. Draw them into your heart so we can pray together on all their behalfs.
Help us find the courage
address our Sefer Torah, preparing to return it to the Ark. I invite you once more to please rise if you're able.
V'zotat Torah she'sa Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yalalai lai lai lai, lalalai lai lai lai, yalalai lai 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 lai, yalalai lai lai lai.
So one more moment of Torah to delve into those words which I chanted. Hopefully you have that handout. And I have two choices. I can either put on my mask and get closer. I'm going to stay here so I can see your faces. But Paul Sharkzy, do you have that sheet in front of you?
I do.
Can you read for us in that big booming voice just the translation of those few lines of Torah which I chanted? It starts, "You shall not."
You shall not subvert the rights of your needy in their disputes. Keep far from a false charge. Do not bring death on those who are innocent and in the right, for I will not acquit the wrongdoer. Do not take bribes, for bribes blind the clear-sighted and upset the pleas of those who are in the right. You shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt.
Now, I had the pleasure of getting to study both with Owen and Natalia a little bit in preparation for their becoming B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow, and I know that each of them are going to share so beautifully what this line means to them, how it connects to the mitzvah work that they've done. But not all of you are going to get to hear it, and so I want to share two interpretations from other great minds, two rabbis, who spoke about this line, this mitzvah that comes up 36 times in the Torah, not to oppress or in some cases to love the stranger more than any other commandment. Why so many times are we told this? What does it mean? Adrian, do you want to read Rabbi Sachs for us?
To be a Jew is to be a stranger. It is hard to avoid the conclusion that this is why Abraham is commanded to leave land, home, and father's house, while long before Joseph was born, Abraham was already told that his descendants would be strangers in a land not their own. Why Moses had to suffer exile before assuming leadership of the people. Why the Israelites underwent persecution before inheriting their own land, and why the Torah is so insistent that this experience, the retelling of the story on Pesach, along with the never forgotten taste of the bread of affliction and the bitter herbs of slavery, should become a permanent part of their collective memory. Why should you not hate the stranger, asked the Torah? Because you once stood where he stands now. You know the heart of the stranger because you were once a stranger in the land of Egypt. If you are human, so is he. If he is less than human, so are you. You must fight the hatred in your heart, as I once fought the greatest ruler and the strongest empire in the ancient world on your behalf. I made you into the world's archetype of strangers, so that you would fight for the rights of strangers, for your own and for those of others, wherever they are, whoever they are, whatever the color of their skin or the nature of their culture, because though they are not in your image, says God, they are nonetheless in mine. There is only one reply strong enough to answer the question, why should I not hate the stranger? Because the stranger is me.
You might have been able to tell from the way he spelled the word color, but Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, for many years the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. For those who are watching on live stream, if the mic didn't pick it up, we read the Sachs text. But my question to us tonight, because we get to study for just a couple of minutes, is what does it mean today? In 2022, here in America, when we read this line, not to oppress, as sometimes it's translated, not to harass, not to afflict the stranger. What is it telling us today? And if anyone feels so bold as to even want to raise their hand and share some contemporary example that you think this mitzvah speaks to, I invite you to think about it for a sec. Andy, yeah.
Let us speak to our current controversy over immigrants' rights and how can we aid people who are trying to come to our country for purposes of freedom or opportunity or to escape oppression in their native lands.
So don't oppress the stranger, embrace the stranger. Immigration, refugee crisis. We're actually going to have a refugee Shabbat in just a few more weeks where we'll focus even more specifically on that question and what Judaism has to teach about it. Beautiful, thank you. What else? What is this speaking to?
Well, it also speaks to something that's very hard today, which is to not look at the people who don't agree with you as the other and the stranger, because we don't like what they say.
Right, so who's the stranger? It's the person who votes differently from me, right? Or who has perhaps a different worldview, or who we might disagree with on any number of political issues, but don't hate them either, right? Find a way to reach across the aisle. Beautiful. Maybe one more example? What does this speak to today? It's so urgent, the call. I'll share one more that's on my mind, especially this week around what happened in the Senate and voting rights, right? Don't oppress, don't harass the stranger. Every citizen should be able to safely cast their vote, right? That sacred privilege and responsibility. Not oppressing the stranger means that no matter what different race or religion, what socioeconomic status they have, what political affiliation they have, they should be able to, without oppression or harassment, cast their vote. This question of not oppressing the stranger, or how to encounter the stranger, came up just a couple of weeks ago in a very different context with the near tragedy, thankfully the averted tragedy in Colleyville, Texas, where my colleague, Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, has since been, chastised by some for opening the door to a stranger to offer him a cup of tea. Turned out that stranger was not such a good man. And yet, who are we as Jews if we don't keep opening the door and inviting in whatever safe ways we are able to, the stranger? But it's not just about political legislation, lobbying, or some of these bigger, broader issues. Rabbi Shefa Gold also teaches us that this line is really about not just what we do with our heads and our hands, but what's inside our hearts. And she focuses on the word nefesh at the bottom of the page I'll share. The clarifying phrase, ve'atem yadatem et nefesh hager, for you know the soul of the stranger, gives me the key to the door of compassion. The verb yada, to know, signifies intimacy. When I encounter the stranger, I am commanded to know her soul, to step inside her skin, to see that his pain, his joy is not different than my own. This moment of knowing breaks the chains of oppression. When I encounter the suffering of the stranger, it can be an opportunity for me to approach and begin to heal the place inside myself that remembers suffering. From that place of newfound wholeness, I can then work for justice and become a healer of the world's pain. The secret ingredient is profound connection with the other. Gazing into the soul of the stranger, compassion is born. This compassion embraces your own suffering as well as the stranger's. Remembering what it was like to be the stranger, The spiritual challenge is to let your heart open first in compassion to yourself, and then expand to encompass the reality of the stranger who stands before you. Amen.
Open the door.
Open your
eyes. Open your heart. See what's inside. Lay down your walls. Lay down your fears. Lean into love. You are welcome here. Maker of day, maker of night, feed me with song. Let me be your light. Hine matov, u'manayim, shevet achim, gam yachad.
Turning back to our prayer books, our concluding section, the Aleinu on page 586. Please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'teit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו 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 אחד.
You may be seated. On page 595 at the bottom, we find the beautiful words penned by the young poet Chana Senesh, paratrooper during World War II. She wrote in Hebrew, Yesh kochavim she'oram magia arza rak ha'asher hem atzmam avdu ve'enam. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. Turn to this moment of memory, drawing close to mind and to heart all of those bright lights that are shining on us from above. And we rise together as we prepare for Kaddish, which is on page 598. In particular, thinking of those for whom a period of shloshim, of 30 days of mourning, continues to be observed. Stanley Pleasant, husband of Gloria, father of Leslie, Nora, and Marie. grandfather of Melanie, Haley, Zach, Gabe, Olivia, and Jaden. Madeline Danberg, mother of Michael Danberg. Richard Rubin, husband of Len, father of Lynn, Stephen, Kathy, and Lori, father-in-law of Karen and Morgan. Valentina Gerstenstein, wife of Vietnamese, father of Edward, Arena, grandmother of Victoria. Ted Weinberg, husband of Audrey, father of Blake and Taylor, grandfather of Stella, brother of Bill and Saul. Tamar Schnapper, mother of Lisa Schnapper. Helen Welsh, aunt of Marvin Wexler. Lester Malcolm Breen, husband of Betty, father of Adam and Ashley, father-in-law of Jill and John. Jean Heller, mother of Betty, Nancy, and Paul, mother-in-law of Evan and Catherine. Roberta Ross, mother of Sabrina Fiddleman. Arnold Turtz, husband of Dossie, father of Lisa, Beth, John, father-in-law of Jesse, Ed, and Mary. Esther Canterman, mother of Michael Canterman. And to those names, we link all those for whom a yard site is observed this week in our temple community. We also remember with reverence Benjamin Weiss, Reba Spivak, Barbara Belisle, Jerome Dreyfus, Jacob Wiener, Gil Schwartzman, Katie Sobel, Mike Schraga, Adolf Max Weiss, Alfred Chodesh, Marilyn Sharkazy, Stuart Turner, Milton Cohn, Donald Wayne, Elizabeth Nadell, Daniel Jacques Marcus, Alexander Fine, Adolf Max Weiss, Leopold Paul Berger, Fanny H. Schlanger, Manfred Seiden, Harry Huberman, Seymour Finver, Fanny Apple, Martin Kahn, Rhoda Getz, Irving Matras, Samuel Schatzberg, Horace Goldstein, Murray Coven, Elise Klufer, Lillian Sumberg, Edward Zimmerman, Fred Fine, George Halpern, Benjamin Ostro, Teodoro Sandler, Amy Quinlan, Jacob Rothstein, Iris Goldberg, Bernice Witten, Myron Bloom, Isabel Pollack, and Dr. Harriet Y. Rabinowitz. And if you are saying Kaddish for someone whose name you didn't hear, I invite you to add that name as well out loud if you're comfortable. May the light of their love continue to illuminate our lives as we join together in remembrance, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon u'v'yomachon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudasha b'richu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories ever be for a blessing. Amen. You may be seated. I want to invite up a member of our executive committee. Yes? Martha Steinman for a few words of greeting.
Shabbat Shalom. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here in the sanctuary, and I learned a new word tonight, live streamland. Hello in live streamland. Thank you to the clergy and our musicians for an absolutely beautiful service. Natalia, Owen, Mazel Tov. We are so delighted that you are going to become the newest adult members of our community tomorrow. If you haven't read their drashes and the Thursday email, I encourage you to do so, because if you read them, you'll know that they are going to be rock stars tomorrow. So I know you'll be great. Enjoy every minute of it. There's a lot going on, like there is every week. We have Morning Minyan and Chevra on Zoom tomorrow morning, so I encourage you to do that. Are they in person also? I mean, I don't know if it's coming to snow, but okay, get your sled and come over here. And if you can't make it, then you can do it on Zoom. You can learn about Home and Homeland, which I think is on Zoom, with Rabbi Frankel this Thursday. Everything is in the Thursday email in terms of the links and things that you need. The only other two things I want to mention are you have one more week to sign up for the women's retreat, which I'm sure will be a wonderful weekend. And also this Sunday, after you've dug out your driveways, please go over to Larchmont Avenue Church at 4 p.m. and help sort clothes and other things for the next midnight run. And with that, I will wish you all Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, Martha. Let's all rise together for our closing song. Get your hands together if you're out there in live stream land to sing along. Here we go. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba. Ya ba 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 bim bam, ya ba 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 ba, ya ba 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 ba. Ya ba 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 bim bam. It is like fiddler. Ya ba ba, ya da 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 da. Ya da da da, ya da 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 da. Ya da da da, ya da 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 da. Ya da da da, ya da 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 da. Ya da da da. Ya bye bye, ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Shabbat Shalom.